Okay, that was funny. Welcome to live TV, everybody. Hit the wrong button. Awesome. All right. Hey, welcome to Invisible Condition, everybody. It's not all in your head. It's not. I'm your host, Jeff Pearson, and we want everybody with an invisible condition to know beyond the shadow of a doubt that you do have a voice, you have a community, you are not alone. And I am so excited to introduce our guest today. She's awesome. Lisa Schermerhorn. She grew up with undiagnosed learning disabilities, and kind of describes how she spent every summer of her childhood in summer school thinking she was, stupid, which of course she's not. After a mental breakdown, feeling suicidal, seeking help from multiple therapists, no tangible results whatsoever from like any of that. She saw a hypnotherapist and finally got her life back. Um, uh, you know, she went out to study cutting edge techniques to help people to get to the root cause of what's going on, which is really good. Root cause is better. Root cause is better than symptom. Let's just get that out of the way right now. I wish more people would do that. Let's figure out what's actually going on instead of just treating the symptom. So I love that. She went on as a certified hypnotherapist, which is very cool, and master practitioner of neuro linguistic programming, which I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that. I most commonly know it as NLP, the initials, NLP. So Lisa helps people release their blocks and step into their authentic selves. It is so cool. She is an author, transformational leader, and award-winning speaker, which I don't sound like right now. I feel a little tongue-tied. Let's bring Lisa on. This is ridiculous. We're just gonna have Lisa come on here and start talking so I can stop talking, because clearly my tongue is in a knot in my throat. How you doing, Lisa? Good morning. Thank you for being here.
Oh, I'm awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I always love talking to you.
Oh man. Oh, I love talking to you too. This is like fantastic. I I don't know what it is, man. I don't know if it's today or if it's just the week. I don't know what's going on, but man, I feel really a little tongue tied today. So I'm really excited that you're here, because you're just gonna sail right through, and we're not gonna have any problems here. So it's gonna be great.
You're making a lot of assumptions here. It's been a long day.
Don't jinx it, right? So tell us. So you faced some crazy stuff like earlier in life, like learning disabilities, all the stuff. What was that like, and how did that, like, can you just describe what that was like,
Right.
living with undiagnosed learning disabilities, no less? Like,
Right.
if you know what it is, it can be frustrating, but when you don't know what it is, come on. So yeah, tell us about that.
I just remember being in kindergarten and everyone in the class was doing their numbers, and they were reciting their alphabet, and they started to read. And I remember, I don't know if you remember those book, Fun with Dick and Jane, and everyone's reading through, and I couldn't read. I couldn't do my math. I couldn't do anything. And if you don't have the foundation, then you're lost. And so with each grade, everything just got more and more complicated for me, and more my self-esteem got lower and lower. And imagine you're 6 years old and you're in summer school and all your friends are at camp or at the beach. I grew up at the Jersey Shore, so I was spending hours trying to learn to read, but no one understood what was going on back then. And so my family really valued education and going to a good school. So there was a lot of shame that brought on in my family about, not doing well in school. And I remember at one point, my parents were doing the best they could with what they had. And I remember in 7th grade, they had the option of taking French. And my parents thought, Lisa won't be able to handle that, so she won't take French 1. But then in 8th grade, they offered French 2, which was the continuation of the whole first year. And my father was like, well, I want Lisa to learn French because I want to take her to Europe the following summer. And so it would be really cool for her to learn it. Well, putting a kid that has learning disabilities into French 2 without having French 1
Huh.
does not help matters at all. So, of
No,
course,
no.
I flunked. I
Yeah.
could not keep up, which also created bullying.
Oh,
Because
sure.
when you're not doing well and the teachers call on you and you can't answer them and you're suddenly tongue-tied and, you know, everyone looks at you. So
Yeah.
I had this belief that I wasn't smart. I believed that everyone knew more than I did, and I just gave my power away to everyone else because what do I know?
Yeah.
I did get into, I had a teacher, and this is the one thing that I learned is that when you have one person outside your family that believes in you, that's everything. And my art teacher saw something in me and she was like, Lisa, you're actually a really talented artist. So it was the first time I had something. And then I got into Rhode Island School of Design for a summer program, and they wanted me to go there for college. And that's like the #1 art school in the country. My parents were afraid that I would become a poor starving artist or marry one. So that was out of the question. I did go to college. I went to school for business and marketing when in retrospect, I'm really grateful because it's gotten me to where I am today. And I married young and had my children, and I would look at everyone else and think everyone else has something unique and special. They're all talented, but that's just not for me. I'm just going to do the best I can. And by the time I was 38, I remember having a nervous breakdown. And here's the crazy thing about when you have a wound, like not believing you're smart. What I did was I started studying everything. And I pushed myself to do more and more
Yeah.
and more and more, never feeling like it was enough. So
Kinda-
if you look at my list of accomplishments, like someone literally recently called me Forrest Gump.
Wow. I don't know how I would take that, honestly. It'd be like, you just kind of go, thank you.
Well, it was more
I
like
don't know what
all the different things that I have, you know, learned and tried and done
Yeah.
and, you know, just stuck my toe, everything. So,
You know, yeah.
yeah, so I had this nervous breakdown and I didn't believe in myself. I just didn't understand I had a purpose, and I just went into a dark, dark place. I was going to therapy 2 to 3 days a week, and they were really helping me with coping mechanisms, but they weren't getting to the root cause of why I was so depressed and why I just didn't want to be here anymore. The crazy thing is most people think about hypnosis as those people on stages where they make people do crazy things.
Yeah. They put something, dangle something in front of them and put them to sleep, and then, yeah, make them stand on their head and run through the crowd with a, yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's my
And
perception. I mean, yeah, that's
it's
everybody's
a lot of
perception.
people's perception. And
Yeah.
here's the and that drives me crazy because I don't even know
Yeah.
how to do that. It's a special training that they learn. It's called stage hypnosis. They're your stage hypnotist. So I don't even know how to do that.
Wow.
And what I have learned is we actually go in and out of hypnosis 7 to 10 times a day.
What?
If you ever daydream, if you're ever driving in a car and you pass an exit because you're like, that's all it is.
Or
So
you're
I
driving
just,
and you get to the place and you forget how you get, like, you don't remember anything about how you got there.
yeah,
That kind of that
that's
kind of thing.
actually the state of hypnosis. So we have 5 major
Wow.
brain frequencies, and you're going from beta, which what we're in now, into alpha.
Okay.
And alpha is also a deep learning state. So I learned
Okay.
all of this and I was fascinated by it. And I thought, I need to share this with other people because there's got to be people that are going through what I am and don't know about this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I know so many people that are going through stuff that they think they're like, I mean, they think there's something wrong with them because they can't soak up a concept. Or I have always had trouble with, I'm not diagnosed with any, we didn't do the diagnosis thing when I was a kid. Otherwise I'd probably be diagnosed with several things, but reading is not my friend. I am not a fan of reading in a book. I love listening to stuff, but I cannot stand like the words they just dance all over the page. I don't read well. And so that probably would have been diagnosed as something as I was a kid, but I don't know. I don't know. Is it important to get diagnosed with stuff like that? I mean,
I'm not diagnosed, but I will tell
okay.
you, when I wrote a book, and
Yeah.
everything I do, I have to go over it and over it and over it,
Yeah,
right?
totally. I'm with you.
And
Yeah.
and my math, I transpose numbers. So when I
Mhm.
write someone's phone number down, if I have to take down a credit card number for a client, I have to go over it and over and over it. And it's just become part of me that I develop these skills to overcome. And that's
Yeah.
what we do in all of our issues in our lives.
Right. Yeah. No, that's adapt or die, right? I was just I was just watching Moneyball last night, and I remember him saying that. He's like, adapt or die. You have to if you don't adjust, right, you're just gonna drive yourself crazy. So yeah, no, that's awesome. I love that. I love that part. Let me just throw this out here to the audience that's watching here. um just out of curiosity, if anybody has questions about learning disabilities or anything that we talk about today. I mean, if through this whole little less than an hour that we have left here, if we go somewhere and start talking about something, you go, yeah, that's me. I want to ask about that. Don't be shy. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube or anywhere that you can comment, do it. Just type in a comment, and we'll see it. If we don't see it during the show, we'll see it after, and we can reach out to you, or Lisa can reach out to you. We'll have her contact info up here in a minute, and you can reach out to her. So, but I just wanted to throw that out there. So this is not just a one-on-one conversation. We want everybody to, if you have something to say, we want to hear it. So, yeah. So how did, man, okay. So I'm just trying to thinking back to spending every summer in school. um, that's not cool as a kid. That's not fun. That's
No.
like, what, like you said you didn't feel great. I mean, that didn't make you feel great because all the rest of the kids are on vacation and hanging out and playing.
Right. Or I would go to camp, but then I'd get pulled out of activities and have to go for an hour of tutoring every day.
Oh, geez.
So it was always something. I always felt different. I always felt like I wasn't, I didn't belong. But here's the interesting thing is I can now look at that as my greatest gift, because if I didn't struggle like that, and if I didn't go through all of those things, I wouldn't be doing the work that I am today. My life wouldn't have the meaning that it does now. And what I had to do was get myself from a state of feeling like a victim, like there was something wrong with me, that I was broken, to really own it. And what's interesting is, fast forward much later on in my life, someone had me do this why assessment. And so I took this why assessment, and it told me that my why was challenge. I challenge conventional thinking and think outside the box. And I was like, oh, I'm not broken. I just do things differently. And that was what caused that, was because I learned differently, because I did things differently. It didn't make me broken. It just made me unique and special.
So because you learned differently, you were just asking different questions.
Right.
You were just asking, you weren't asking the same questions as the rest of the kids in the class. And instead of right? Is that fair?
Well, I don't know if it's not asking the right questions, but it was more like the way my brain absorbs information is different. So I was talking to a woman who's in Australia, and she came up with this amazing way of teaching math, and it makes it three-dimensional. Because for me to sit and memorize algebraic equations, but I didn't have a context to what that meant. So it was just memorizing information, and I didn't have an understanding of how to apply it. When she made math three-dimensional for me, I was like, oh my God, now I get it. And it was so fascinating to me. And I was like, if someone had just taught me the way that I learn, I would have understood things so much better. But our school system is broken down into a way that everyone has to learn the same way. And we're taught to repeat information back instead of having critical thinking. How did you get to that answer? Everyone has to learn the same way.
See, what I thought I was in school for, when I was in school, was to memorize all the crap they were trying to teach me, right? Memorize all the stuff, memorize your math facts, memorize the dates in history, maybe. And that was hard for me. My memory is not awesome. I mean, I've had in high school, I think that was only two brain surgeries in. Now I've had 7. Let's talk about memory issues. Okay. So that frame of that, what you're in school for, was not okay with me. But now that I've grown and I've learned a little more, I'm realizing that, or what I was told later is, no, when you're in like K through 12 school, you're in school to learn how to learn, right? You're in there to learn how to figure stuff out. And if they're only presenting one way to do it, that's not great. So
right.
I need to get a hold of that person you talked to in Australia, because that sounds fascinating, to make algebra 3-dimensional. Because I've got 2 kids in high school, right? My younger 2 are both in high school right now, and that's what they're working on right now, is all that upper level math stuff that makes my head explode. So it's
and here's the other thing about Dr. Howard Gardner, who's a professor at Harvard, came up with these 9 different types of brilliance. And so understand that, so 2 of them are people who know how to read and write. They're really good at absorbing that kind of thing and being creative. And then there's people who know how to do their math and they can memorize information. They're very linear thinking. Okay. So out of the 9, we get 2 of the types of learning that are enforced at school, because there's athletes, right? There are people who understand the purpose and meaning of life. There are people who are philosophers, who are very philosophical. There are people who see potential, like who can read the wind, and architects, so they can see potential in things. They're creative. There are people who work with the soil, who know how to grow and flowers and things like that. So there's so many different ways that we learn. I can't do the 9 off the top of my head, but if you think about athletes, I could never do that. And are you going to grade me? Are you going to grade me if I can't run like that, or if I can't jump like that? Right. So is that fair? Einstein has a quote about comparing a fish to a bird. You can't do that to people. And I think we all get pigeonholed. So through that process, what I realized was, when I went through that process of learning about the unconscious mind, I learned that we were all programmed. So we are all programmed by our parents' beliefs, by our religion, by our culture, by our school and our teachers. Like, I was programmed to believe that I wasn't very smart. If you think about different cultures, some cultures are all about doing really well in school. Some cultures are about, you need to go to work and help support this family. Right. And
or
you're
the military,
brought up, or the military. You got to follow in the family footsteps and join the family business. You don't get choices. So all of these thoughts, beliefs around money, get programmed at a very young age. So all of these things get programmed, and it's what runs us. So if we experienced a trauma, let's say a parent abandoned us, so at 5 years old. So we now put these new pair of glasses on, and we see the world through people abandon us. And now you recreate situations and scenarios throughout your life that prove that people abandon us. And so that gets reinforced. So now you're at a place in your life where you're on this hamster wheel doing this over and over again. And where I come in is, I'm like, okay, let's get to the root cause of why you keep having people abandon you. Let's go back to this 5-year-old, and you don't necessarily have to be conscious of it, right? Because most people can't go back to that original time.
Well, and it doesn't always have to be your it's almost never the person's fault either. It's just the
No.
feeling that just because you feel abandoned doesn't mean you did anything to cause the
Right.
abandonment. So that's where
Yes.
people really get their mind clouded, is they feel like it was their fault, So,
Exactly. And so they'll take that on as their belief. And then life is a mirror image of how we feel inside. So
mm,
we keep attracting people and circumstances. So here's the miracle. When you go back, and I call this time traveling for your emotions, because we can't change what happened,
yeah,
but we can change the way you feel about it.
nice.
Right? So
Yeah,
when you can go back and change how you feel about something, then you shift the way you see the world. So then we replace what you believed with what you want to believe instead about yourself. And now the lens has changed. Now you see the
nice.
world in possibilities that you couldn't see before.
Yeah.
And that's why this works so quickly. And I always say, I've had people come in and say, God, I just did 20 years worth of therapy in 6 weeks, in 6 sessions. Because I'm not giving people coping mechanisms, although I
Right.
do teach managing your emotions. But you're also releasing and getting to the
Yeah,
root cause of where that came from.
totally. Oh, I love it. And that is, yeah, I'm sorry. This is a perfect time to take a break, because I don't want to encroach on anything else we're going to say from here forward. I thought you were going to go a different direction. I almost had to be like, no, wait, hold on. Let's do it after the break. Cause I know that we want to dive into some of the stuff that you're talking about right now. You're kind of hinting at a couple of things that you help people with. And I totally want to dive into that. But I want to do it on the other side of the break. So nobody go anywhere. Stick around, stay where you are, and we will be right back. And we're going to talk. And on the other side of the break, we're going to talk about some of these techniques that Lisa's talking about, because they're really cool. And maybe if we're lucky, she'll show us one or two. So, but we'll do that on the other side of the break. We'll see you in just a couple minutes.
In a world where office workers typically receive 130 daily emails and have an 8-second attention span, CoreCentrica, with her 4 decades of international marketing experience, has partnered with the Learning Code Institute and their 30 years of neuroscientific research. Together, we are crafting unique messaging strategies that resonate, connect, and ultimately convert our target audiences. CoreCentrica, where award-winning creativity and disruptive neuroscience come together. Scan this code now, or call and click, and let us show you how CoreCentrica's partnership with the Learning Code Institute is influencing how businesses connect with their audience, foster engagement, and achieve conversions.
Does your to-do list have you feeling stressed? Does your list include tasks like responding to email and phone calls, collecting forms and paperwork, and sending quotes and invoices? Have you been neglecting posting updates to your social media accounts, email newsletters, or content on your website? Maybe you need help to get digitally organized. I'm Selena, one of the owners at Office Mercenary, and we're a US-based virtual assistant agency. We can take care of all of these tasks and more so you can get back to focusing on the things you love about your business. Our team is happy to work with you and your individual needs. So schedule a call with us, bring your to-do list, and stop doing the tedious tasks.
Hey, how you doing? My name is Greg Russell. I'm the host of TechnologyTuesday.com. You can find us on the Conscious Business TV network every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the latest resources to help you make more money in your business. Join us on E360 TV. Come on.
All right. Welcome back, everybody. Oh, man. Okay. I almost didn't want to take a break, but I knew it. But, sometimes you gotta do it. So, okay, we're back. This is good. We're going to talk about techniques and approaches that you talk about. First, let me pop this up here. Actually, before I go any further, I want people to know how to get a hold of you. So okay, everybody. This is going to be up for the rest of the segment, and then we'll put it up toward the end of the show too. So anybody that wants to get a hold of Lisa, and I totally recommend that you do, scan the QR code, go to the website. What will they find there, by the way? Just to give them an idea of what they'll see when they get there.
Well, they'll get an idea of some of the things that I do, and I'm actually updating everything. So they'll get more information once I update it. But, it talks about the why. It talks about hypnosis and all the different things that I do to help people. And here's the thing that I just want to get across to people is that, it's important to go at your own pace, right? Because not everyone is ready to do everything at once. And sometimes it's just, baby steps to get someplace. I never want to pull the rug out from under anyone because, it was interesting. I worked with a client once and she started losing weight and she had some major beliefs around it with her husband. And he was locking the doors and locking the refrigerator and hiding food from her. Yeah, because she had gained a lot of weight and he told her that he didn't find her attractive anymore. And she started to lose the weight and then she stopped coming. And I contacted her and I said, what's happened? Is everything okay? And she said, what if I lose the weight and he still doesn't find me attractive? So people get stuck. They get stuck in their belief systems and they're terrified. And so I never want someone to let go of something they're not ready to. But when they're ready, and there's ways that, I do this very gently.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a big deal. You got to, you can't peel half the onion back at once. You got to, that's why
one layer at a time.
One layer at a time. Yeah.
Yeah, and change can be scary. So, one of the things I start people off at, we have something called an autonomic nervous system. And when we get into fight or flight, and, when we've experienced a trauma, people are walking around with PTSD, they're walking around with all of these things and they're not even aware of it. And our system starts to fire these neurons and go into overdrive. And then we can't think clearly because literally what happens is the blood leaves our brain, goes out to our extremities. And then it's how women are able to lift up, cars off their children. This is like, there's real science around this.
Yeah.
So when you take a deep belly breath, you are actually tugging on the parasympathetic nervous system. There's a nerve that you tug on that settles everything down. So most of us breathe from our chest and we're shallow chest breathers. And what I invite you to do, even in a simple meditation, if it's just, a minute, if you can do those deep belly breaths and count in for 6, hold for 3 counts, and then out for 6, hold for 3. That can be the beginning of just settling you down so that you can be grounded, right? So grounded and being present is the first thing, because when you come up against something that's really scary, you want to be able to get the emotion out as much as possible and hear what the professionals have to say. Because how many times do we end up catastrophizing? We only hear the bad and we don't hear the good because we're in this place, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, in breathing, I'm telling you, that strikes home for me because I mean, I was all the way from high school all the way through now. I mean, I've always been, I was a choir guy, and band and all the stuff. And that's one of the first things they teach you is, breathe from down here. None of this, this is, if you're doing this, you're wearing yourself out. If you take a deep breath and your shoulders even move, you're doing it wrong. You got to breathe from here, fill up your lungs like you fill up a glass of water, right? From the bottom up. So, and it's true, man. You take that really nice deep breath and you can sing for days,
You know, and I love that filling. It's like filling up a glass of water. I'm gonna borrow that. I really
Totally.
no, but it's important for people to understand that these are simple. They're not, really big hacks. Another thing is grounding, and this is really an interesting thing. I remember when I was studying about energy medicine.
Yeah.
I was studying about our energy. So when you meet someone and you're like, oh, I don't like them, and you don't even know why, you haven't even said hello. You just because your energy is touching their energy, right? And you're like, oh, there's something kind of weird about this. So you have an energy field that goes out around you. And what happens when we go into fight or flight, we become ungrounded. And everyone uses that term, right? So what that means is you want to actually take an imaginary cord from the base of your spine and send it to the center of the earth. And here was something that was really interesting. We did this exercise where we had to pretend to be sumo wrestlers, and they got these sumo suits and stuff. And they paired me up with someone who was 3 times my size. And I remember going, is this teacher going to get me killed? Like I was like, I'm going to end up in the hospital because this person's going to launch me out of this circle. And here was something that I found fascinating. So I grounded myself and the other person didn't. They couldn't move me. They could not move me. And with one hand, I pushed them out of the circle.
What? Come on.
Yeah.
Wow.
You can do that with your family members joking around, but if they're not grounded and you just kind of push them and then ask them to stand and focus on the energy, send forward into the center of the earth and grow roots from your feet, and then try and move them, you will be blown away.
Yeah.
And when you're grounded, you can then hear as well, right?
Okay.
You can be present.
Say more about that. What do you mean?
It puts you in your body, right? Because when we get a shock or we're in fear or fight or flight, we kind of leave. We're like, I don't want to deal with this. So when we ground, we're back, we're present, we're grounded, and now we can be fully here and fully present. When someone's daydreaming, right, or they're in that la la land, they're not grounded, they're not present. People who spin when they're talking and just randomly and very anxious, they're not grounded.
Okay. So we'll go back to that fight or flight thing for a second. So I've been told a lot over the last couple of years that I had my most recent brain surgery. I've had several. I had my last one in about 2 years, almost 2 years ago. It was in over 2 years ago, October of 2021. And since then,
I invite you to reframe that. Not my last one, the last one.
The last one. Okay. Well, okay. I was the guy on the table, so I kind of claim that as mine. But okay.
Yes.
The last surgery that I had was in October of 2021, and since then, based on some things that I learned from folks that have talked to me about things like what you're talking about and others in that world have basically told me that I've been in fight or flight for the last 2 years because of a couple symptoms that I inherited, because when you have brain surgery, it kind of you never know what you're going to wake up with. You could wake up with migraines for a while, or you could wake up with, for me, I had a couple symptoms that were just wreaking havoc on my daily life. And so, I felt like I was in fight or flight almost all the time. And it wasn't because of circumstances. It was because of what my brain had been through. And so if somebody's in that kind of state, because we can't help that, we can't help what our brain does when it gets, played around, poked around with, I mean, it was a surgery to keep me alive, so I don't begrudge having the surgery, but it's been rough the last couple of years because it's been tiring. When something like that, I understand from experience, like you almost got eaten by a bear, or you almost got in a wreck, or you almost fell off a cliff. But when it's something that you had nothing to do with, and you had to do it for your own self-preservation, and you still ended up in fight or flight continuously, What do you do with that?
So
How do
you still deal with the fight or flight now?
a lot of times, yeah.
Yeah. So
Because
so
yeah.
the so my mentor, Dr. Al, was 85 when I first met him.
Oh, wow.
And he had a daughter who was 60 in her 60s who fell at the train station in Boston. We call it the T.
There you go.
And she hit her head and she was hemorrhaging.
Ooh.
And so she was in the hospital, and he called me the next day and he said, I was up all night worrying. And then I asked myself, how am I helping her by worrying? Because he was in that fight or flight. So I
Yeah.
decided to let it go. And so what it is there's this technique, the emotional release technique, because there's a fellow, Lester Levinson. Lester Levinson in the 1950s was a brilliant physicist. He was a millionaire. He had an apartment on Central Park South. And by the time he was 42, he had 2 heart attacks, his spleen ruptured, and he had ulcers. And the doctor said, there's nothing more we can do for you because your heart's going to just go on you. He went home and he meditated and he went inward, and he's like, we realized after 3 months that he was creating these issues in his body because of his anxiety, his stress, and everything that he was going through. So he came up with a technique to release the emotions so that he could be in the present moment. So this is the technique. Should I let it go? Yes. Could I let it go? Yes. When? Now. And how this works is you identify a feeling. Now, if I tried to remove this emotion, it may be too big, like it's an umbrella for many different things.
Yeah.
So what I would do with you is break it down to all the I don't want to say mini feelings, but levels underneath that, and then we release one at a time.
Or maybe the
right?
individual situations that I realize it's happening, maybe, or something, because
Yes.
there's definitely certain situations that it comes out more than others. So,
Right.
yeah.
So you are
sure.
having triggers because it's bringing you back to memories that'll
Yeah.
trigger that.
Exactly.
And so by releasing these triggers, by releasing these emotions, by going back through that. So that's why I love hypnosis, because hypnosis would take you to the original memory. We might even end up when you're in the surgery or before that, when you had that event. And then we release it. Again, I can't change what happened, but I can help you change the way you think about it. Release those trigger points.
So it's almost like, I've heard this before. I've heard this before, but from somebody, and I'm trying to remember who it was, but they were saying you can still have the feelings. It just doesn't have to completely wreck you. Like you can still look back on, like, if it's a certain event that triggers you every time, once you get past it and get the fight or flight out of it, so to speak, then you can remember that event without it affecting you and causing you to spiral, basically.
Right. Because stress, I had this conversation with you before. When you think about when someone's drinking and they're driving, and then you have other people in the car, and what always happens, the driver ends up, for the most part, surviving, and the other
never
people
got a
get hurt
scratch on the driver.
without a scratch. Because they're loose as a goose. They're not thinking about anything. They have to deal with the trauma post that. But what I'm saying is, when you're in a more relaxed state, when your body's in a more relaxed state. So here's the thing, you get to keep the wisdom. You keep the lessons, you keep the wisdom. But what you're doing is taking the emotion. Our bodies are meant to feel. So I'm not saying don't feel, but we're not meant to keep it. Right?
Okay.
And when we keep it, then we create. So I've actually been trained in pain management. And one of the things they say, there's the acute, there's the thing that happens right away, and there's the initial pain. And then what happens is the body will create a pain highway that continues.
Oh, geez.
So it creates this repetition in it because it's what it knows. So
Yeah.
now it's going along this line, and people like, I don't understand why I have this pain, because the injury was years ago, but the pain's still there, right? So there's a trauma that happens, and the brain is still connected to that. So when you release that, you're cutting the cords to that initial trauma, releasing that, and then it doesn't associate with that anymore. So there's so many things that the mind is so powerful that we can do to release. So between neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, between and hypnosis and the emotional release method and a number of other techniques that I do, I can't change the fact that you have this hydrocephalitis. Did I pronounce that right?
Almost. Very
Almost?
close. Hydrocephalus. It's all right. It's okay.
Hydrocephalus.
You're
Okay.
so close. Yeah. No, that is that's
Right? I
that's the
can't
part that I
change
know we
that.
can't change. Yeah. Yeah.
But what I can change it with people, when they're ready to, is the fear, because when we're in fear, we can bring symptoms back up. We can recreate things. We can trigger it when we're, how many times, and then it works in reverse too. How many times do you have symptoms and then you get to the doctor and they're like, my symptoms are gone.
Yeah.
I've had
like the car never makes the sound at the mechanic, right? It's only when it's in your driveway, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So it's the same with us. I mean, and I've seen people unconsciously create anxiety, create pain, and there's also real pain. And we never want to completely get rid of something if it's an ailment, because you don't want to re-injure, but you can dial it down.
Yeah. Well, and if you see I don't know about other conditions. I can only speak to hydrocephalus, but there are certain pain points that we need to be able to feel as people with hydrocephalus, because that tells us, that's like, ding, you need to go to the hospital, or you need to go get that checked out, or go get a CAT scan, or go get an MRI, or whatever. There are certain things that happen that trigger our brain to say there's something wrong.
Right.
So we don't want to necessarily get rid of everything.
Right.
But you're saying just get rid of the emotion attached to it, right?
Right.
So it can be more objective.
Right. Because when we are attached to these, the fear of what's coming, then we can create it.
Yeah.
So then when we release it, so when I work with someone and they have a lot of, emotions that come up, and believe it or not, this is a crazy one. One of the biggest triggers for people is bored. The word bored.
Bored?
Yes.
Like like I'm bored, B-O-R-E-D?
Yeah, I'm bored.
Huh.
Because oftentimes as children, there's like, don't sit still, you need to be doing something. Like a lot of kids were not allowed to just sit, or you need to be productive all the time. Time is money, whatever that is.
Yes. Okay. I'm sorry. I gotta throw this in here. Yes, I have always been. It's almost. I don't know where it came from. I'm sure if you and I worked together on this, we'd figure it out. But but I've always, up until recently, up until in the last couple of years or last few years, I have felt so guilty if I fall asleep during the day. Like if I take a nap, it's like the end of me. It's like, how could you do that? Look what you did. You just wasted an hour or 2 hours or whatever. And of course my wife's like, what are you talking about? If you took a nap, it's because you needed the rest. Just take it and roll with it, man. You clearly you needed the rest. Just be thankful for the nap. But I felt so guilty falling asleep when I could be doing things, and being productive. So yeah, I can totally relate. So
that's a big one for people. So imagine if you just got neutral about it. So it didn't trigger you, so that if you wanted to take a nap, you could, because then you could recharge your battery and you wouldn't beat yourself up. Or you could make the decision, I'm going to plow through this, but I'm going to rest later. But giving yourself that time to have that rest and being bored. And here's the interesting thing: when our brain is quiet, that's when we get our information from source.
That's when we get some of the coolest ideas that you come up with, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So it's counterintuitive because when we're daydreaming or when we're walking and we're not doing anything, or what we think can be some of the most productive times in our lives. So I'm just
Yeah.
using that as an example, but I have the sheet that has column after column after column, because we can be run by a belief system that we inherit as well as programs. So
For sure.
if there's people who maybe grandparents survived the Holocaust and they have
Yeah.
major trust issues, and that gets passed down, and now you're having issues with trust, but you don't have any reason for that. I don't understand. It's just in my family. None of us trust
Yeah.
people.
What's the deal? I don't get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. Oh, that's crazy. Well, and it goes all the way back. I know a lot of people don't believe me when I say this, but I've talked to enough people, and I've looked into this enough. You can remember stuff from in utero. I mean, from conception, you
Yes.
are a human being, and you can feel things and absorb things, and so even in the womb, inside the uterus, you're still hearing things and feeling things, and so even some of that can be. And I've also heard that
Yeah.
if you feel an emotion and it makes you cry, and it doesn't make any noise, like you cry, but it's silent, it might be because it was before you could form words. Like it was a pain that was like pre-language for you or something,
Wow.
or
I haven't heard that.
that's
Wow.
what I heard from one of the amazing counselor that we saw back in 2008. That was just absolutely incredible. But she's like, if that was her thing, was if you cry and no noise comes out, it could be because that pain was rooted, before you were verbal or before you were even born. So interesting thought, right? Like,
And you know what? But you are right, because I've worked with people, especially people who have been adopted, because
yeah.
they're connected to someone who they don't even know. They
Mhm.
don't know what they've been through. They don't know the trauma they've experienced. Why? All they know is they're feeling, and they can come into the world feeling unwanted, right? And
Right.
that can be also the pregnant mother who's going through an abusive situation, safe, whatever that is. And then
Yeah.
the newborn comes in with those belief systems, and in therapy later on may not have any way of accessing that, or not even know.
Or not have the words to describe it because it was
Right.
that far back. Right?
Pre-verbal. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, unbelievable. See, this is all that fascinating stuff that just makes my head explode a little bit. It's it's so cool though. To know that there's ways to work through that though. I mean, the thing that you were doing before, I'm sorry, tell me what you called it
This
again.
should I let it go? The
Yeah.
emotional release method.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
emotional release thing, that's huge. I mean, I know we don't have time to work through anything on the air here, because it's usually bigger than what the 5 minutes that we have left in the show, but but man, I tell you, that is valuable.
It is. And I do it all day long. And here's something that I want to tell people about
Yeah.
is that when you first do it, you're generally disconnecting an emotion from something that happened, a long time ago.
Okay.
Now, it doesn't mean that you're never going to feel that feeling again, because we're here to feel feelings and let them go. And
Sure.
so what this allows us to do is, once we've released the number 10, like from 0 to 10, the 10 that's really holding you back,
Yeah.
then it'll come back, but you'll be able to release it easier. You'll be able to, it won't give you as much of a charge once you've released it. And here's the other thing that we didn't cover is forgiveness. Forgiving yourself, forgiving others. When you're talking about an invisible, condition, not everyone has it from a medical condition. Someone can have it that because it was caused by someone else, inadvertently or on purpose, right? There's violence that happens. The more you hold on to those feelings and emotions, the more that holds space in your brain, and they end up taking over your thoughts. When you really forgive and you're no longer charged by it, and forgiving yourself, and people wrestle with God.
Yeah.
Why me? Why me? And I had a cousin who had lupus, and she used to say, why not me? And I was like, wow.
Right?
Right.
Wow. That is good. That is good. I mean, honestly, I would not be where we wouldn't be having this conversation if
Right.
if I did not have, if the events of the last 10 years didn't happen the way they needed to happen. I mean, these last 5 or 6 surgeries that I've had in it's been a chaotic last 10 years. Let me
Right.
just tell you, it's been crazy. It's been expensive. Hospitals aren't cheap. But it has been incredibly valuable, because if I hadn't gone through that, I wouldn't have met the people that I mean, you look back and God orchestrated it all. I mean, you cannot deny that, because looking back, I never would have met the string of people that I needed to meet to even get to you, to get to this show right now.
Right.
So never begrudge anything bad that happens in your life, because it probably is going to teach you something, honestly.
Exactly.
So that's it takes a little time to accept that, but it's true. It's true. So, well, man, we got about time flies when you're having fun. I told you this would go fast.
It did.
We got about 2 minutes left. Is there any last thing that you want to leave the audience with, or any last words of wisdom you want to leave us with?
I just want to let people know that there's always hope, no matter what. Right? It's no matter what you're going through, no matter what your diagnosis, there's quality of life, and there's a different way to always think about it. And I haven't had so much physical issues, although I've broken bones and had things like that in my life. I just a year ago got a concussion and fractured 2 bones. But my issues have been more mental, right?
Yeah.
Emotional, dealing with depression that nearly took me down, and that's an invisible condition. And there was a lot of shame around that too, because people don't understand it. They don't know what to do with it. So when you have control over how you're going to feel about something, when you can let go of the emotions and you can be neutral about something, and be able to release all of that, it will change your life. And so I just offer, when you're in pain, that also causes you to not feel so good emotionally. When, all of these things, or not being able to do the things you want to do, it also. So just being able to manage your emotions about what you're struggling with can make a huge difference.
100%. Yeah. Or at least even just to put a name to it, to be able to say, this is what's going on. And then you can address it. Sometimes that helps too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I feel like we don't have enough time. I feel like we should have you come back for another one, because we got more to talk about. But for today,
you know where to find me.
I know. I'll find you. No, this is great. You're right, man. I love talking to you. This is great. We got to do this again. So, okay, everybody, I'm just going to say it officially. Watch out, because Lisa might be back. It might not be for a little while, but she might be back for another show, because we got more stuff to talk about. But thank you for today. Thank you for being here so much. This was great, and I so appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. I am so excited that we got to do that. Man, I'm still kind of blown away about what we talked about here, but this has been great. I so invite everybody to go back and click on that QR code and get in touch with Lisa, because she's got so many cool things in her tool bag that can help you. And I'll tell you what, if this or any other episode is your favorite, share it, because if it's your favorite, it's probably somebody else's too, or it will be, but they won't know about it until you share it. So share the episode that you love the most, and get it out there. We appreciate that. And thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. And we will see you on the next show, which will be Friday, March 8th, I believe, is going to be the next show. So until then, have an amazing day, and we'll see you next time.